Hardcore Lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you again. I'm your Wednesday night host. This is sort of like a label week where all week long we're all sort of looking at a film that came under a particular label, and this week it is Scream Factory, and it is week 341. So this is something that you can expect second week into the month from here on out. So we'll see how this week rolls with that. But this week, my pick out of Scream Factory is 1984's Dreamscape. There, Dennis Quaid, and I don't know who doesn't love Dennis Quaid, but this film came out in 1984, and it's interesting because it does have Brainstorm right before. It does have Nightmare on Elm Street right there too, and so at least for that moment here in the early 80s, the use of dream logic and nightmare logic was starting to become a real thing. Of course, who can forget 1979's seminal classic Phantasm, which is just steeped into that sort of nightmare logic, right? And if there was a sub-genre of film that we could just label as nightmare logic, I would say my top three most favorite sub-genres, it would have to be nightmare logic and some island horror and some probably slasher, I guess, would be my top three. So Sam's with me again. It's been a long time, but he's with me. And real quick, right off the top, before I go any further, what's your favorite subgenre if you had a subgenre?
Either supernatural or dream logic.
Supernatural, yeah. So it's good stuff right there. A lot of good films. And maybe favorite supernatural-based film?
Probably like The Exorcist, maybe. I guess it just depends on how you view it. You could either view it as like a demonic possession or like supernatural, but most would probably view it as a supernatural, so that would count as one.
I think definitely for myself, I think Nightmare Logic definitely has to be probably, I'm just going to go off on a limb and just say City of the Living Dead, Lucio Fulci. Yeah, so anyway, so Dreamscape. It is a Scream Factory label, and of course this is the Scream Factory edition, and of course, some great reversible cover art. Hopefully there's no glare there. You can all check that out. And so just talk about Scream Factory for a minute, and then into the film a little bit. But Scream Factory, is one of these things that there was a time not too long ago when I really didn't. If somebody would have just come up to me out of the blue and said Scream Factory, I would have been like, huh? But wandering into Moods' shelf by shelf series and slowly but surely starting to learn the ins and outs of collecting these days. I think I got a little bit of a Scream Factory collection, at least 4 boxes up there, and I think almost 20 some films, I think, from Scream Factory. And like a lot of labels, Scream Factory, it offers its own brand of things, whether it's extras, you got the commentaries and the making of, and I know on this one there's a 2-part making of that's really great. And so with any label that goes out of its way to give you something a little bit different, that's the whole reason why we collect from labels anyways, whether it be Arrow or 88 Films or even Scream Factory is here domestically. But Dreamscape, really, what you have here is this dream phenomena type thing. You got a research facility that's trying to tap into the ability of sending people into a dream and sort of a therapy session to try to work out people's sort of subconscious fears and things that they sort of penned up inside. And, and so Dennis Quaid, let me just round out the cast. This cast is freaking stellar. You got Dennis Quaid as Alex Gardner, right? You got Christopher Plummer, Max von Sydow, a young Kate Capshaw, and of course, same year did Temple of Doom. I'm pretty sure it was the same year did Temple of Doom. And Eddie Albert plays the president. And really what you have here is you have a lot of things going on. Some political conspiracies going on. You've got this, the antagonist really, sort of multifold, I guess. But there's one guy in particular that really does get off on going into people's dreams and hurting them. Of course, you got the guy who's in charge of the project. He's got a problem with the president because the president is being haunted by nightmares of nuclear warfare, and so he sees himself, right, as a savior to kind of lead the United States into a nuclear-free world. Well, Christopher Plummer's his character has a real problem with that, and so what can he do to take this president out via somewhere in the dream world where he'll get away with it? And so enter Dennis Quaid as sort of your protagonist who will have to match wits with this other guy who's in there working against him. And there's some interesting things going on with this film in terms of use of dream logic and going into people's dreams. And I'll ask you here, I think for me, my best, intriguing moments deal with a small little boy who's being plagued by a specific nightmare, right? And so Dennis Quaid, one guy goes in and tries to help, and he apparently comes out in a fright coma or something. And so Dennis Quaid, sort of talks himself into it, and so he goes in, and he's able to help this kid. And so I think for me, just that own piece of dream logic, and there's some aspects of dream logic that are meant to be somewhat humorous, and then a little bit scary, and then politically intriguing, and just kind of a big, interesting scope to this film. What'd you think?
I really liked it. It's probably one of my favorite, I would say, top 10 movies. Not top 3 though. But I really liked how, at least at the ending, how they did that whole they're both in the dream one's trying to protect the president, one's trying to kill the president, and you don't know what's gonna happen. And you also I like the foreshadowing they also use in the movie, and where after the whole the kid's nightmare, the antagonist that goes in the dream later uses the description of the kid's fear against the protagonist, so I kind of like that. But yeah, I really liked how this movie all kind of connected with Dennis Quaid's character being who he was, bring back into this. I also liked all the other characters with that were main actors, like Max von Sydow, and it's nice seeing those faces in there.
Yeah, pretty heavyweight cast.
Yeah.
Some big. This is, definitely not. Nightmare on Elm Street. In terms of casting, this is pretty stellar cast. So yeah, and I have to add too. When I was a kid, I think I started loving the idea of dream logic / nightmare logic, probably with Phantasm as a kid. But seeing this moment, I mentioned Brainstorm is a movie that I really dug too as a kid watching. But then you've got, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street, which sort of sets off a whole franchise in motion built on that premise. And of course, Dreamscape. Dreamscape is a movie I watched probably endlessly anytime it was on HBO. I remember it coming on HBO quite frequently. And so that's why I think, my subgenres of film, I really do think nightmare logic, call it dream logics type film is probably my favorite subgenre, next to island horror for sure. So Dreamscape, it's also just a few interesting notes real quick. The second film to get a PG-13 rating on it, Red Dawn was the first. A little controversy though. My son thought it was Temple of Doom, and now that I think about it, I have to go back and really look. But these movies are all coming out really roughly around the same time, so it is interesting, the PG. So regardless, Dreamscape is one of those first films that will have a PG-13. And as a result, there's a love scene that's in there that actually was kept out of it because of the new PG-13 rating, which is interesting as well. So, but stellar cast. If you dig nightmare logic themed films, but you want one with a little bigger scope and an absolutely stellar cast and a pretty good story. It's not just a horror piece. There's a lot of intrigue here and just sort of big scope things that even kind of play off of our at least those of us who have fears of nuclear Armageddon in these things. And Eddie Albert as the president is fantastic. But just to see Max von Sydow in action, and of course it's always fun to see Christopher Plummer at it, and I'm sure Dennis Quaid probably had a bit of a tough time acting in the shadow of some of those greats, right? So, but anyways, here at week 341, it is Scream Factory. So everyone this week is going to be showcasing their Scream Factory films that they've picked out. And I would definitely, if Scream Factory, for whatever reason, you haven't bought a lot of films out of there, or maybe any, definitely check them out as a label, man. They do offer a lot, and as we continue on month by month, we'll look at a different label, and we'll just see. I think these are the types of things that people really dig, because you kind of get to see what other people are into, especially under a specific label, right? So this week, second week in the month, it is Scream Factory, and so we talked just for a few minutes about Dreamscape from 1984. I did not mention this, but it is a Joseph Ruben film, known for The Stepfather in 81, Sleeping with the Enemy in 91, and The Good Son, 95, I think that was. So anyways, there you go. Dreamscape, Scream Factory. Just really have fun this week. Check it out, all the films and that we'll be talking about. And as always, we end these things off with Go Bills.